Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Film Audit. My name is TK.
My name's Jared.
I'm David.
I'm Spencer.
Okay, today I'll be moderating. And honestly, we're just four college students and great friends who just love watching films and just giving our honest opinions about it. Okay?
Yeah, good to be here, everyone.
I think to start things off, I had watched two movies that I didn't think I'd be able to watch. And the first one, I actually watched with David. So I guess we can just give a little feedback off of it. So the film we watched was Jojo Rabbit. I've been wanting to watch it for quite some time. Love Taika Waititi and his work. Been a fan since, I guess, my film art analysis class. And I just love how he takes serious subjects and makes it to where it's like a comedic twist, but yet it has such an impact on you.
Yeah, I really liked it. I didn't love it as much as a lot of other people have seemed to, but I thought it was really well done. Taika obviously borrows a lot of style from Wes Anderson. If you watch Moonrise Kingdom and this back-to-back, which I kind of almost did because I watched Moonrise Kingdom like just a few days before, some of the similarities become very apparent, but I think it really finds its own personality in like the heart of the story and like the emotions that it's trying to convey. I thought that the standout performance was the little boy who plays the protagonist. I thought he did a really good job. And he has good chemistry with all of the other actors too. Mm-hmm. So,
no, I totally agree.
Was there anything that you just particularly liked about Jojo Rabbit, or anything that you didn't so much?
I just like how do I explain it? None of the characters are too forced at you, you know? They just slowly start to grow on you. And, like, for example, the mom, who's played by Scarlett Johansson, there's, like, little subtle hints that you can help define her or identify her as a character. So, like, the shoes, for example. So, when you see a certain scene with her in shoes, it's like, oh my gosh.
Right.
Like, I don't even need to see the whole image of what's happening. Just that symbolism is enough.
Yeah.
So,
I thought that was good foreshadowing, too.
Uh-huh.
Some of the stuff that I didn't think worked as well for me is it's hard to do comedies that revolve around like tragic events, and it's possible, and there are other movies that have tried doing it, and I think that Jojo Rabbit for the most part does a really good job of balancing the comedy and the lighter tone with the darker elements while still respecting those darker elements and portraying World War II and the Holocaust in like a serious and mature way. There were a few times though where I felt like the comedy kind of detracted from the emotion of the scene. I think the most egregious moment for me in that respect was toward the end of the film when the Russians, or is it the Russians or the Americans, have invaded the city where all of the main characters are at in Germany, and it's like all out war, everyone's fighting, and there's some like really dark stuff going on with like sending children out to just die basically, and there are a few, like, to me there were a few too many jokes about the fact that everyone was just kind of going out to die, and it kind of pulled me out from the fact that like these are real people like being killed and blown up and shot at and stuff. So there are a few other moments like that where I felt like the tones kind of clashed a little bit, but I respect that the film for the most part did a good job of balancing those two aspects.
I see. Okay. I personally really like the film a lot, and I would totally recommend it. It's definitely a good sit down and watch. There's some edgy parts in it, but it's still funny. I liked it a lot. But to continue on, I also watched Marvel's Eternals.
Oh, wow.
And one of my roommates apparently really liked that film. And I was like, okay, I'll sit down and watch it with you. So I watched it. I thought it was okay. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great, if that makes sense. You know, I'm like in between those.
Okay.
Have you guys seen Eternals?
Unfortunately, no. I have.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
I was not a fan. And, you know, I'm typically a big supporter of like Marvel movies in general, but this did not do it for me. It was, I don't know, I think I have to disagree with you. I think it was terrible.
Okay.
It was, I don't know. They had no direction as to where they wanted to go. It's like they were making it up as they went. That's how I kind of viewed it.
I see.
Yeah.
So your view is more like me with like I guess you could say the sequels of Star Wars.
Worse even.
Oh, you think it's worse? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually a movie that I've been wanting to watch. Not because I want to watch it. I guess after hearing about how badly it was received, it makes me more interested to check it out and just see for myself how bad it really is. But it's also hard because it's like 2.5 hours long, and that's like a lot of time to dedicate to like a bad movie. The best bad movies are the ones that are short and sweet, and you can just watch it and then laugh and then it's over.
Mm-hmm.
And like the thought of wasting 2.5 hours to watch something that I know is going to suck, it's harder for me to like commit to doing that.
Yeah. Its reputation, I have like a select few Marvel movies that I've just thrown into a category of I have no motivation to watch it.
Yeah.
Especially after hearing reviews and the reputation it has. It's just, I'm good.
Yeah.
I have no desire.
So given that like Jared and I probably won't watch it soon, if at all, what do you guys like? What do you guys like think about it? Like what did you hate? What did you not hate as much? Like you can go into it.
I think it's a cool. I think I like the idea of the plot and the story. It just wasn't handled the way it should have been, in my opinion. They could have done way better work at it. That's like the best way I can put it.
You see, like the premise,
right?
Yeah, the premise is all right. It felt weird because you know you're watching a Marvel movie, but it doesn't feel like Marvel. The only thing that that reminds you that it is Marvel is like the quips that they make all the time, and they keep mentioning like other characters and events that they weren't a part of, and it does not feel like a Marvel movie.
Do you think that hurts the movie?
I
That
think
doesn't feel like everything else? Or maybe it's execution trying to be different.
Probably
just fell
that.
flat.
Yeah, probably that. Trying to be a little too different.
Yeah.
And it had, like TK said, it had a pretty good premise. But if you're going to do a superhero team that is super not well known, you've got to be willing to just change some things, I feel like, to make it a little bit more integrated into the universe that we already know. Like, I think a good example of that would be Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
Because, like, before Infinity War, where they met the Avengers, you knew it was a Marvel movie because it was fun. It had good jokes as opposed to Internals, which did not have good jokes. And it was colorful, it was different, and it was very unique. And it's a lot of fun, but Eternals is just kind of miserable, really. It's like a kind of a darker tone of a movie, I guess, for Marvel. And it makes us wants us to care about these characters when we know nothing about them. And I don't want to know anything about them. So, like, the motivation to care is very low.
Right. No, I totally agree. I think another thing that makes Marvel, or any superhero movie, or movie in general, is when it comes to characters, if you're trying to make us focus on the characters, make it to where, like, we like the character or we hate them. And it got to the point where I hated a character who wasn't supposed to be hated at all.
Really?
Yeah, I'm like, dude, please die. Like, it bothered me so much seeing this person live and get what they wanted in the end. And I was like, this is kind of dumb. And all the characters who were important, there was no foundation for them. So, like, they were just I guess, like, white noise to me, I guess. I was just watching the plot at that point.
Wow. Yeah, that's kind of what I've heard is that, like, because it's got a large cast of, like, heroes that are, like, part of the Eternals group, but you don't really get to know any of them very well, even though the movie is 2.5 hours long.
Yeah.
And there should be plenty of time to, like, get to know an ensemble cast, like, even a big one. Like, you should at least have some sort of attachment to each of them. And then, from what I understand, also, like, some of the characters just, like, leave the story and then don't come back.
Basically.
And it's like, okay, well then why did we spend time with you if in the end you don't even contribute to, like, the resolution and, like, the climax?
There is, like, one good bit about it, and that is the character Gilgamesh. But then he dies, like, halfway through the movie.
Yeah.
And then after that, I was like, I don't want to watch this movie anymore, because he was the only one that I like to watch.
Okay.
Which one was he?
He's the Asian guy.
Yeah.
Oh,
Super
the guy
Strength.
from Train to Busan.
Is he from Train to Busan?
Yeah, he's the burly guy.
Yeah. I had no idea. I didn't know he spoke English like that.
I didn't either. Dang. Well, that sucks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, spoiler alert, my bad.
Were you going to say something, Jared?
I think I don't know what this translate to in the minds of Marvel and Disney as a company, because in their heads they're like, oh well, like in comparison to a movie coming out in the same year also being Marvel, like for example Shang-Chi, in their heads do they think like, oh, we tried doing something different and obviously that doesn't work, so we'll keep making movies like Shang-Chi, you know, where I think neither one of them work, but I hope that I think it was valiant to try to do something different. I just think it fell flat on its face. But I don't think Marvel should count out, you know, giving directors a chance to do something different and not necessarily follow the Marvel formula. Because I know what you mean, Spencer, when you say that, like, it didn't feel like Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes when it feels too much like Marvel, I don't care about the movie. Because it follows the same formula of character progression that doesn't progress, but just is eventually going to show you a cobweb of, oh, this leads to a big movie we'll do in 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And it gets hard for me to watch. So I hope that in Marvel's eyes, they don't think, oh, well, we can't do something different. And it doesn't look like that with Doctor Strange, at least. Seeing trailers for that. I know a couple dropped since our last podcast. But that's just another example of Marvel doing something different.
Mm-hmm.
It feels different. And I don't know necessarily if I'm going to love it, but at least I'm excited for them to be bringing on a director to try a different genre within Marvel, and to explore a character a different way than just, oh, hey, this leads to the next big villain.
I think a good example of Marvel trying something different would be Thor Ragnarok, another Taika Waititi movie. And he does a really good job of, like, reinventing the character Thor, because up till that point, Thor had been, like, nobody's favorite Avenger, and he was just really boring and dull. But Taika Waititi reinvented him and made him slightly more relatable, I guess. And he just went crazy and did a whole bunch of different things and explored new things in the universe. And I think that was a good example of how to do something familiar, different.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of Doctor Strange, you guys all saw the new trailer, I'm assuming, for Multiverse of Madness?
You're talking about like the one that came on the Super Bowl?
Yeah, that one or the other one
that's
too.
the newest one, but the one before it either.
What do you guys think of it?
It looks very interesting. I'm excited to see it. I don't really know what to think about it yet, because the premise they keep saying is that it's going to be like a horror movie. But I haven't gotten those vibes yet from the trailers I've seen.
Wait,
it just kind of looks like mildly suspenseful, but that's all I got.
Oh, okay.
There are a few shots that to me look a little bit more like Raimi-esque. The scene where Doctor Strange is talking to like the evil version of himself is kind of reminiscent of Norman Osborn talking to the Green Goblin through the mirror. And then like there seems to be a lot more dynamic camera work that Raimi's known for. And now that Jared and I have watched like the first two Evil Dead films, you know, in addition to the Spider-Man films, I feel like I understand Raimi's style a little bit more than before. And so you can kind of see hints of that here and there in the trailer. Obviously, it is just a trailer, so it's not necessarily going to be indicative of the entire film. But I was happy to at least see some elements of Raimi in there. I don't think it's going to necessarily be like a Sam Raimi film, like the Spider-Man movies were very much his, or the Evil Dead movies. But, you know, it is still at least more unique than some of the other recent Marvel fairs. Because, sometimes Marvel does let their directors have their own signature on the film, like Taika Waititi for Thor Ragnarok or James Gunn for the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. Those feel a lot like movies that those directors would just make, but it's in the Marvel Universe. Other ones, not so much. Black Widow just feels like Marvel. Shang-Chi just feels like Marvel. You can't tell based on watching it who the director is.
Yeah.
So, I'm glad that at least Sam Raimi is coming back to the superhero genre. They should just give him Spider-Man 4. But,
I could not agree more.
I'll take what I can get, and if this is fun, and if Sam Raimi's allowed to be himself and
get in the Marvel universe.
Yeah, and bring in his horror sensibilities that he has. I think that can be really fun. So, I'm mildly optimistic about it, but
do we want to talk at all about the rumors that have come out since the new trailers?
Oh, that Iron Man's gonna be in it, or that
something about Tom Cruise. Is that what you're talking about?
There's that, and there's a couple other ones.
That Magneto's gonna be in it.
And Professor X.
That's what I meant.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't hear about Magneto, so probably just Professor X.
Yeah.
I mean, I can see that being a possibility, just with having the timing of them acquiring, what is it? Warner Bros?
Fox
that owns X-Men rights. And then having movies such as Doctor Strange dabbling with multiverse stuff right after Spider-Man.
Right.
It would make sense. So it doesn't really surprise me to hear those things. But that would be cool if that is. I feel like for myself, Doctor Strange is a really cool hero, and I feel like I was disappointed more than anyone when the first movie wasn't that good, in my opinion. But I love the idea of a different world within Marvel, such as magic. And that sounds kind of dumb, but I feel like there's so many visual things that you can do with that, and Doctor Strange feels like a breath of fresh air, or he at least should be. Whenever we're given a movie about him, because it's not going to be fist fighting and shield and all those things. It's going to be magic and mystical stuff and different universes or dimensions. And so I hope that they can. I'm excited for the character of Doctor Strange. I hope that this is something I have fun with a lot, because I feel like as someone being creative like Sam Raimi, there's so much you can do with Doctor Strange. Over something like Black Widow, I guess.
Yeah.
But that's just what I'm hoping for. Some cool visual stuff that they explore.
Yeah. And I guess, speaking of comic book movies, we've talked before about the Batman trailer, but that actually comes out next week. Mm-hmm. So we'll probably have seen it by the time our next episode comes out, so we'll be able to talk about it then.
Yeah. Kind of creeped up on me. I just assumed it was always going to be far away. And it would never come out, so I'm like, oh, trailer's cool. Yeah. And then it was like, oh my gosh, David, it comes out in 3 days. We're like, oh my gosh.
And then last time Jared and I were at the theater, we saw a poster for the new Robert Eggers movie, The Northman, which is also coming out soon. Director of The Witch and The Lighthouse.
And you know what's funny? I haven't seen any of his movies, but I'm really intrigued with him as a director. And so I was following this the news of this movie since before the trailer came out. I just stumbled upon it on Letterboxd. I was like, wow, this looks really cool. So yeah, it's a trailer. The movie's called The Northman. The trailer's really cool. Yeah. You have one of the Skarsgård boys. What a family. And then William Dafoe. Nicole Kidman?
Yep.
Yeah, she plays a good, scary blonde woman.
Ethan Hawke.
Often. Ethan Hawke.
Anya Taylor-Joy, who was in The Witch.
Yeah.
Is going to be in it.
Have you seen The Witch?
I have not.
I really want to. Have you?
I have not, but I've seen The Lighthouse, so I've got that. That was very different, but I haven't seen The Witch, and it looks interesting. I'd like to watch it, but my wife, Elizabeth, is not really a big fan of horror, so I don't know when I'm going to be able to watch that.
Okay, so if we have nothing else left to say, we can move on to the main subject of our podcast. Jared had this podcast episode's movie. If you want to take it away.
Yeah. So last podcast I recommended 12 Years a Slave. Felt like it was fitting for the month of February, as we're recording this right before the month ends. And to give a little synopsis on the movie, So it came out in 2013 and directed by Steve McQueen. And just going to read the Letterboxd synopsis real quick. In the pre-Civil War United States, Solomon Northup, a free black man from upstate New York, is abducted and sold into slavery. Facing cruelty as well as unexpected kindness, Solomon struggles not only to stay alive, but to retain his dignity. In the 12th year of his unforgettable odyssey, Solomon's chances meeting with a Canadian abolitionist will forever alter his life.
I'm glad I didn't read that before the movie because I feel like that spoils a lot.
Yeah, that's kind of a weird synopsis. That's not how I would have, talked about the movie.
How would you describe it?
Well, I agreed with everything until it just started talking about Brad Pitt.
Yeah.
What the heck?
Yeah, yeah. I guess we'll get there later.
Yeah.
First off, spoilers for 12 Years a Slave.
Yeah. Spoiler warning for this movie. It's been out for almost 10 years. Get to it. We just got to it. So with 12 Years a Slave, it's kind of laid out just sequentially for you. I think it starts out showing you present, which is about midway through his slavery. And then it flashes you back to his life before and starts to give you an understanding of where Solomon came from. And we kind of get a chance to see that Solomon is just a normal guy living a life in the northern part of the U.S. at the time with a wife and kids, and educated man, plays the violin very well. And we quickly get brought into this situation where he goes from his family leaving for a few days for a job to him meeting a couple guys that ask him to basically be part of his like a performance type of thing where they need to go to Washington. By the end of it, he gets, I would say, drugged. Yeah, he was drugged by these two guys and then sold into slavery. So pretty much right off the bat, we're thrown into this world of just unexpected turns. Because at first I was like, oh, he's 12 years a slave. I didn't know he gets kidnapped and brought into this world. But then from there, we get a chance to see Solomon go through different situations within this awful time where slavery was okay. And this was before the Civil War, so very much still divided between North and South, where it's okay. And he gets brought down to the South to be sold. We're given a lot of different interactions with characters, different ideas of what this should look like as being someone that is kidnapped and taken into the situation. So we meet a couple people along the way, including slaves and people selling them and transporting them. So the majority of the film, we are taken through his 12 years as a slave. And we see a number of different owners, a number of different situations he's been put in. And it's a very interesting take on this part of our country's history. And I feel like it does a really good job of showing this topic of slavery from all sides, from all perspectives of different owners and the religious approach to slavery that a lot of these people had, or even in the eyes of someone that should be a free man, but is brought into this life with everyone else.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I really appreciate about the film. And obviously this is based on a book that was written by, Solomon Northup in real life. But I think that the fact that Solomon started out as a free man and then was kidnapped into slavery means that the film has a very unique perspective on slavery. I was looking into things behind the scenes, and Solomon Northup in the book makes a lot of comparisons to life as a slave and life as a free man. And that's not a comparison that a lot of slaves could make at the day, because most had been shipped over from Africa and didn't know anything different, at least not in the United States. So the fact that he starts out as a free man, it's a lot easier to relate with him right off the bat. So when he gets put in this crazy scenario, you can really put yourself in his shoes, because he was living a normal life like you or I would be when he's put into this horrible situation. And you can tell that he's different among the slaves in all of the plantations that he works at, because he used to be a free man. So his perspective on slavery and life is a lot different. He seems to kind of set himself apart from the other slaves. One of the things that I noticed was that he doesn't really interact with a lot of the other slaves on the plantations. that he works at. And I think for me, one of the pivotal moments of his character is it's about 2/3 of the way through, and there's a slave that dies, and they're burying him, and everyone, all of the slaves that are burying him, except for Solomon, begin singing this song, and at first Solomon isn't participating, and the camera just lingers on his face, and you watch him listening to the song. And finally he breaks and he starts singing too, and you can just see the emotion coming out of him. And I think that's, for me, where the character stops separating himself from the other slaves and realizes that he's really in the same situation that they are in. And it doesn't matter that he started out in a different place than they did. They're all there now. And that's kind of when he starts reaching out to the other slaves and making more of a connection with them, I feel.
I think another thing I gathered from that moment was not only is he like starting to accept he's like everyone else, I feel like that was really where his perspective changed. Instead of feeling like, oh, I shouldn't be here and I'm going to get out one day, I just need to keep my head down. It went from, no, I'm just like everyone else. I'm a slave and there's nothing I can really do. I feel like that moment was kind of heartbreaking for me, because you just see him, like, it felt like his will to try to get out was kind of gone after trying so many times and like trying to keep his head up. Mm-hmm. And then to see him just join in on the song and get emotional and just become where everyone else's situation is in. I feel like it was two things it was trying to deliver to us in that moment. It was really, really powerful.
Yeah. I really do remember that moment as very big for the character as well. And during that scene, I was trying to think about what might be going through his head. And the things that I was thinking about was maybe he thinks that since he was a free man, and he's educated, he's learned it. I was wondering if he believed himself to be above them, or, just kind of more cultured and stuff. But then when he begins to sing, I think that's his acceptance as that, I am not above anybody. We are all equal. We're all the same, and we need to be there for each other during that scenario. And that was very powerful. And I don't believe he thought that at all, but it is a big moment to come to, I don't know, almost accept his fate. And it was almost a scene of defeat. It seemed like it was sad, and it was during a funeral. So there's always, there's the sadness that comes with death. And he's also singing that, like, maybe he's going to be the next one to be buried.
Yeah.
And so he's, I think, at that point where he's defeated. It was very emotional. I almost cried a couple of times during that movie.
Yeah, this whole scene and theme that we're talking about reminds me of a line that Solomon says while he's on the boat to one of the other slaves being sold with him. And he says, "I don't want to survive, I want to live." Mm-hmm. And you see that kind of change, because once he does get sold off, it seems like he is more concerned with survival than living. He has this passionate conversation with this woman who's been separated from her children, and she's crying about them, and he gets upset, tells her to shut up, and that, he's lost people too, and she retorts, back that, well, why aren't you crying for your children then? Are you going to forget them? And they have this really good back and forth where, it's not quite clear who has the correct perspective, because they both bring up good points. But it's definitely clear that in that moment, Solomon is picking survival over living. He's not crying for his family because he doesn't think that that's the way to survive. And we see later when the woman is dragged away and presumably killed or sold off, her fate is left ambiguous. But it's clear that, he did pick the path of survival. Whether or not that's a good thing is up for, the viewer. And from then on, you see that Solomon, for the most part, chooses survival. He does keep his head down, like Jared was saying. But I feel like after that scene where he does give in to the song, that he realizes, no, I would rather live than survive. And he starts to be a little bit more resistant to things around him. Though I guess throughout the film he does fight back against the slave masters that are wrongfully punishing him when he didn't do anything wrong.
I think that is one thing that's already, we just started our conversation, but what's so cool about this movie is that the message it's portraying has so many ways to receive it. And for us to be talking about the same minute of a movie and all three of us have like completely different perspectives on what it was trying to relay, like they're all completely valid and moving messages. I that's just going on from that. I think that's what I applaud this movie for so much, is that it takes something that we've seen over and over, slavery, and makes something new and interesting and something that you can critically think about and have problems with on any side. There's moral problems within our main character and within slave owners. But so Steve McQueen, one of the things I really liked, I don't know if you guys noticed, but right off the bat, I really liked how restrained he approaches every scene. So like, for example, some of the camera work, or actually a lot of the camera work throughout the movie, isn't very romanticized or up close. It's all very drawn back and stationary camera work. And so you're seeing scenes that are emotional, but from very, very far back, just sitting and watching it.
I do remember a lot of like long takes and long shots like that. Like there's that scene where after Solomon fights back during one of those to one of the slave masters, he's basically hung, but not all the way. He's like kept on his toes for a while, and it just lingers on him for hours. And I think that was just, well, you know, not literal hours, but in the time of the movie, that's the amount of time that he was being hung for.
So I do want to, that's actually something I want to bring up. So they intentionally shot the movie. Let's see, I was reading that a lot of their inspiration for the way they wanted the film to look was a famous artist from a while back. I don't know when he lived, but his name was Francisco Goya, and he did a lot of slavery depicting art and just gruesome moments in the current history he was living through. His art was hard to look at because it portrays these really hard moments, but in art. And so they said, McQueen, the director, in quotes, said, "When you think about Goya, who painted the most horrendous pictures of violence and torture and so forth, and they're amazing, exquisite paintings, one of the reasons they're such wonderful paintings is because what he's saying is, look at this. So if you paint it badly or put in this sort of wrong perspective, you draw more attention to what's wrong with the image rather than looking at the image." So I felt like in that scene where you see him just hanging for so long, drawn back, and you see, like, it is hard to look at, but it's shot very well, and it looks like a piece of art because it's showing a snapshot in history. Like, look, I want you to look at this moment, how hard that is.
Right, and like you're talking about how most things are pulled back and not close up. It uses mostly objective camera angles as opposed to subjective ones. And for me, that parallels the approach that Solomon Northup had while he was writing his book, too. I looked a little bit into it. And he ends his book, 12 Years a Slave, by saying, "I have no comments to make upon the subject of slavery. Those who read this book may form their own opinions of the peculiar institution." And so for me, the fact that Northup approached his book from an objective perspective where he just says, "I'm not going to tell you what to think. This is what happened in real life. You decide the morality or lack thereof of this situation." I feel like the movie takes a similar approach where, because it shoots everything in such an objective way, you're just presented with the facts and the history, and it's up to you as a viewer to attach emotion and meaning and morality onto what you're seeing. And I just think that works really well and treats the audience with respect and makes the film more impactful than I think if they had tried to make it feel more manipulative with its emotional beats.
I agree. I appreciate how it didn't try to manipulate me as a viewer, because it could be very easy to say, look how bad this is and look how really bad it is. Let me show you how I can show you how bad it is. But it's already slavery. We know it's bad. And to let us view it in this drawn back sense of watch this moment, watch these acts through the lens of the moment and not through anyone's exact perspective. I really like that, because I feel like I could have my own feelings about moments throughout the movie without it trying to tell me what to feel in the moment.
Yeah, something I do want to talk about, just going back to the scenes of horrendousness, was when the character, what's her name?
Patsy?
Yeah, Patsy.
Dude.
When the scene with Patsy where she's being whipped first by the slave owner and then Solomon and then back to the slave owner again, it shows like her back when she's being whipped, and that scene I think was the hardest for me to watch, because like it shows you that she was whipped to the bone, and it was extremely horrifying to watch, but I understood what the movie was trying to do, trying to show me that this was a terrible thing that happened in our country, and there's nothing we can do about it. It happened, and it shouldn't be ignored, basically.
That part did actually get me a lot too, as well. One thing so with her being whipped to where like, her flesh was open, you could see her bone. Yes, it is a bit graphic, but it did bother me. But the reason why I got into film was because of special effects. How they were able to make these kind of things, to where you're not thinking, oh, that looks so fake. But in this case, it looked very real.
I was shocked while watching it. I kept thinking, how did they pull this off?
Right, and on top of that, also when Solomon is sold into slavery, when he's beaten with a paddle and it breaks, I'm like, how did they do that? That stuff, it really intrigued me. I'm like, this is why I kind of like film a lot. To where you can mask an illusion, to where it envelops the audience a bit more.
And to applaud another aspect to that moment, adding to why it was so hard to watch, is a lot of the film. So this moment that we're talking about happens towards the last, like, I would say 20 minutes of the film. It kind of feels like a climatic moment within the film. We get Michael Fassbender's character, the slave owner, I don't want to butcher her name. One second. The scene involves Michael Fassbender and Lupita Nyong'o's character and Chiwetel Ejiofor. And it gets so hard to watch because within this first 2 hours of this film, we get a very drawn back perspective on the movie. Of course, with it varying throughout. But this exact scene, I don't know if you guys noticed, but they don't cut. There's no cut within it. And the camera movements become a little bit more human, and it's following different emotions throughout it, such as Fassbender getting angry, trying to give the whip to Solomon, or cutting, moving backwards to see a little bit more of Patsy. It just started getting a lot more like aggressive, and so you could feel the tension rising without even realizing, because it shows you something different than it's done the whole time. Mm-hmm. And so as technical aspects, acting, and with emotions rising, I felt like that was a very, very good moment for a lot of different reasons. I really appreciate, that's another thing I want to touch on, like the acting in this movie. It's amazing. I was surprised by the cast. There was a lot of people in here that I didn't know would be in it, including Benedict Cumberbatch, plays a slave owner, and what's the girl from American Horror Story? Sarah Paulson. Paul Giamatti is also in the film. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of actors and actresses that you would notice, but I feel like they weren't in here just so I can remember their face. When I think of this film, you you don't have like a poster with 30 people that you recognize on it. I feel like this was just an opportunity for everyone to be part of a project like this, which I think was cool.
Mm-hmm. I do feel like having a lot of those big name actors, I don't know why, but like it took me out of the movie a little bit, just like a tiny bit. And that's no fault to their own because they can't really help having a big reputation, but it was like, oh, Benedict Cumberbatch is in this. Oh, Brad Pitt.
Yeah, for me, I wasn't taken out at all by any of the other actors. But when Brad Pitt showed up, it was a lot more noticeable. And it's not really his fault, because it's not like Brad Pitt gives a bad performance, but it's Brad Pitt, and he's one of the producers, and it just felt a little bit more, I don't know. Brad Pitt helps produce a movie, and then he plays the character that ultimately is able to rescue Solomon from slavery, and I feel like it actually would have benefited from having a more like no-name actor play, because all of the other characters that Solomon tries to convince to help him are people that like I don't recognize. Like the guy who he pays to send a letter for him that then later betrays him. I didn't recognize him. He's been in other things that I've seen, but I didn't recognize his face. So I feel like if Brad Pitt's character, the Canadian abolitionist, had similarly been played by just a regular-looking guy, it might have helped the audience feel the same sense of hesitancy that Solomon felt in sharing that information. Because Solomon, ever since Washington, didn't tell anyone that he was a freed slave because he knew that he would be beat for it. He tells the one guy who betrays him later, and then he definitely doesn't do anything after that. So he's got these giant trust issues, and if he had to confide in some unknown actor, it would have communicated the feeling that Solomon would have had of confiding in an unknown guy that he just met, that has expressed his distaste for slavery, but that doesn't guarantee that he's going to do anything. Mm-hmm. But the fact that it's Brad Pitt, it's, as an audience member that Brad Pitt is good and just and will do the thing that Solomon tells him to do. And so that pulled me out. And the conversation between him and Michael Fassbender also kind of pulled me out. Because that was the most explicit part of the film, where they just kind of talk about slavery. And you have Fassbender arguing in favor of slavery and Pitt arguing against it. And it's the only time in the movie that does that.
Yeah.
And so I felt like that kind of broke some of the, the realism. Mm-hmm. Not that people didn't have conversations like that, but just the way that it was portrayed, I felt wasn't the best. It didn't ruin the movie by any means.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I still, for the most part, enjoyed the scenes that Chiwetel had with Pitt. I feel like the scene where he does open up to him is still powerful. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I definitely think that Brad Pitt kind of stuck out.
Yeah, the movie being as great, and as much as I love this movie, the only thing that stood out to me, I agree, is just the Brad Pitt part. So it just stands out because everything else is so well done. To see Brad Pitt on the screen
with his Amish beard,
just happens to be what solves our problem in the movie. Which I haven't read the book. That is probably exactly how it happened, but just to have Brad Pitt in that moment, and how they decided to go about showing his motives as a white man on a slave plantation, being one of the only white men that he can trust. The way it went about with the Michael Fassbender conversation did start to pull me out. That was the one thing I wrote down while watching the movie was like, oh, it's kind of weird, but it doesn't make the movie bad in any way. It's just, of all the great, that sticks out.
Yeah. Because I think that everyone else does a really good job. I also didn't know that Benedict Cumberbatch was in the film. And I actually really liked the character and his portrayal. And he's a character that really existed. He was in the book also. And in the book, Solomon Northup is very compassionate towards Ford, I think is the character's name, the slave owner. And Solomon in the book talks about how he doesn't fault Ford for being a slave owner, and he more faults the circumstances of the time that he grew up, which is very compassionate coming from a slave of this guy, that he's able to look through and see that Ford isn't a bad person just because he's involved in this evil practice. And I think that the film does a really good job of portraying that as well, because you see that Solomon does, you can see that he likes Ford and that he trusts him and that he feels like they're more friends than Ford might be with some of the other slaves on the plantation. And it makes it more heartbreaking than when Paul Dano's character, who's like one of the slave drivers on the plantation, is trying to kill Solomon, and Ford is trying to protect him, and Solomon decides to confide in Ford that he's a freed man and that he shouldn't even be here, and that the best way to save him is just to release him and send him back to the north. But because Ford is in this situation where he's in debt to other people and he's already wrapped up in this whole slavery thing, he can't bring himself to hear what Solomon is saying, and so he has to pretty much ignore him. And it's tragic because you can just see on Chiwetel Ejiofor's face and his performance that he's just devastated. This was the one guy that he thought might be able to help him, and in the end, he doesn't. And it's sad, but it's complicated, because you're trying to balance your feelings, and Solomon's trying to balance his feelings toward Ford that are positive with the fact that, despite that, Ford still chooses to do the wrong thing and, contributes to 10 more years of Solomon's enslavement.
Yeah, I really did enjoy that character, Ford. Mostly because of the morally gray question that comes up. Like, are you a bad person if you are a slave owner? And of course, slavery is bad and it is evil, but there were people who, I guess, were a product of their time, and they were still kind and compassionate towards others. And it's like, of course it doesn't excuse what has happened, but just to show like another side of that, like not all of them were
like Michael Fassbender's character.
Yeah, exactly, like rageaholics, and it just tarried into these people, but they were compassionate and they valued their lives above maybe their own reputation even. And it was very interesting to see that portrayed in film. And I did really like that character and a little bit of exploration we did into that, basically.
And I think another gray area that the film is able to portray is once Solomon Northup is at the second plantation that he works at with Michael Fassbender's character. I should just look up his name. Edwin Epps. So once he's on Epps' plantation, he also visits this nearby plantation run by this other family. And when he goes there, he sees that the mistress is also she's a black lady, and she was a slave, but she found basically an escape route from slavery, which was to embrace the fact that her owner liked her, and he was taking advantage of her as his slave, but then she likewise took advantage of him and was able to kind of work her way out of slavery and then become the mistress of the plantation. And now she's the one giving the orders to the slaves. And it's it's odd because you'd think that someone who was a slave would not want to subject other other black people to slavery, but she does, and she seems to have no remorse for it. And in fact, she talks to Patsy, who is also visiting the other plantation, and seems to be kind of her mentor and like telling her how to do what she did, and encourages Patsy to accept the fact that Epps is sexually attracted to her, and let him do whatever he wants to with her, and take advantage of that fact to maybe one day become the mistress herself, which is just abhorrent to think about, but that kind of stuff also happened.
It's awful.
Yeah, going back to that though, the slave owner Epps, his mistress, like his one he's already married to, I was genuinely confused on what was going on with her when she was sending Solomon to do errands, because I thought she was like writing like love letters to another guy. I didn't know, because for some point of the film she was gone, and then right when Patsy's about to get like beaten, she just shows up and says, "Beat her to death."
Oh, right.
I'll beat the wind out of her. I was like, oh my gosh.
Do we know what those scrolls that Solomon was bringing back said?
I know, because he opens it at one point to read in the middle of the woods, right? And I was like, what's going on? And it just fast forwards to them dancing at the party.
Okay, so we don't ever learn what he read.
No, because I think that's up for interpretation.
Oh, interesting.
So basically, I guess I'll share my interpretation of what I thought that was. Like, being, such a learned man as he was, having something to read could be a little bit, what's the word? Freeing, I guess, to have something to remind you of your life before, I guess.
Kind of like an escape.
Yeah, exactly.
I think, part of it, when she first sends him out, she's like, just to be sure, you're not educated, right? You can't read or write. He's like, yeah, I know. And so when he goes, it's like, oh, well, I have this opportunity to just, she's telling me not to read this. I can't. I want to. I need to, like, be the person I was. But also for him to, like, hide in the woods just shows, like, the double-edged sword of, to even read a piece of paper for 10 seconds is to put his life on the line.
Yeah.
And to just, like, it is kind of confusing to be like, wait, what's so, like, tense about this moment? Why is he, like, hiding right now? But I think it's just the simple idea of him even reading a piece of paper is dangerous, because he could be seen as, not good property that they can keep control of,
Yeah.
That's
a good point.
I was genuinely scared at that point, because the first time he went to go run errands, he ran into like an execution of slaves. I was like, gosh.
I felt like that was really powerful, because you see, like, you're following along with him. Solomon is like, oh, here's like kind of a chance to just walk out of this plantation right now. I can possibly walk out. So you get about 30 seconds of hope with him, also followed with just tension of like, oh, he's going to try this.
Yeah, it's suspenseful.
Yeah. And then you are remembered that is not that easy, and hope is gone. Just like that.
Right. All eyes on you.
Seeing a bunch of slave owners catching runaway slaves and having to just walk past them being lynched. Just really hard to watch.
And then speaking of that, I guess one of the things that, and again, it's based on a true story, so it's not like, I'm not necessarily praising the screenwriting, but I do think that it makes for an interesting narrative. The fact that Solomon gets out, not because he's able to make some daring escape in the middle of the night with this intense like action scene where he's being chased and he makes it off of, he takes a ferry or somewhere. He works for 12 years, and then finally he's able to get a letter out, and people that know him from the north are able to contact authorities, and all this bureaucratic stuff goes down, and eventually he's like just taken out. And it's so like unromantic and not glamorous at all. And it's interesting because like the poster, at least on Letterboxd for the film, is Chiwetel Ejiofor running. And so I kind of figured that eventually his escape would be something that he just runs away. Yeah. But the more it went on, the more I realized that I didn't want that to be how he got out because it wouldn't have like fit with the rest of it. Anyway, and again, it's a true story, so I guess I don't really know who I'm complimenting here, but I do think that it just makes a more interesting narrative that even the way that he got out is just so matter of fact and like not cool at all. It's like somebody finally showed up. He's just working in the field in the scene where he finally gets freed. He's working in the field, and a guy comes up and says, "Who's
Platt?"
Yeah, who's Platt? And he's like, "I am." And he looks very confused because it's a normal day. He's been doing this for 12 years. There's nothing special about today. And it's the authorities, and he asks them questions, and he looks over and he sees Mr. Parker, the shopkeeper, who we see him interact with at the beginning of the film, and he goes to the carriage and just leaves.
Right, but it's not that simple either because you start to become attached to a lot of the side characters.
Yeah.
It's like Patsy, when she just calls out to Solomon, like, "Hey, wait," and they have like a brief embracement of a hug, and then he just leaves.
It's a lot more impactful.
Yeah, it's kind of sad. I'm like, wait, like, don't leave her, At least help her or help everyone, but you can't.
Right,
Yeah.
and not in this situation. But one of the things that I love that I noticed that part is that beautifully contrasts with something that happens earlier in the film. Because Solomon Lane has been talking to this other slave on the boat, and they've kind of been like talking about leaving, and like they're going to get out, and like this other slave seems to kind of know what George is like, or like what's going to go down. He seems to understand more than Solomon does. Solomon seems to think like, oh no, they're coming for me, they're going to help. And this other guy's like, no, nobody's going to come help you. And then as soon as they got off the boat, this other slave's, I think former master or maybe current master, but I think it's former, someone who freed him, comes and says, "You got to give him to me because I have papers saying that he's my property, so you guys can't have him." And the slave walks off with his master. He embraces his master, and then they walk off. And Solomon Northup is calling after him repeatedly, but the guy won't turn around and look at him. Like as soon as that other slave gets the chance to free himself, he doesn't turn back. And one of the things that I love is that when Solomon gets free, he doesn't commit the same mistake that guy did. Mm-hmm. He turns around, he goes, he embraces Patsy. He has to leave. He can't just, stay and help because there's nothing that he can do while he's there. But he does turn back, and and when he's leaving, when he's on the carriage, he still looks back at the other slaves. And the text at the end of the film informs us that Solomon went on to become a very successful abolitionist. Yeah. And so I love that contrast that it sets up at the beginning with the other slave and shows that Solomon does turn back. Solomon does help other people that are in his same circumstances.
To the extent that he can,
Yeah.
Which is, again, a hard thing to think about, because you could look at it one way of like, yeah, he just got in that carriage and left. It's like, no, he did what he could,
Yeah.
Like,
it's not like he could have stayed and fought for them.
It's easy to look back now and be like, no, we should all know slavery's bad. Everyone walk up and leave with me. It's like, no, it's so complicated that this is just his moment of going back to normal, and it's not, even that moment isn't romanticized because he's just one person that gets to go. Mm-hmm. And as we hear Patsy crying, like echoing as he's still on the carriage.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one thing that gets me for most films is whenever you see moments like this, whether it's like something where he's running away or when he's being freed, I don't think there's any music that plays with that. Because it gives you more time to think and interpret it for yourself. What you want the music to be. And I really liked how it really left that open for us as an audience, as a viewer. But again, another thing is everyone in the background, every extra, not even a second, I don't know how to describe it, just everyone that's plays in the background, they don't show any emotion. Right? Because they're so used to it. Whether that's someone being beaten to death, someone's being killed, someone being sold off to slavery, being separated from your family, no one shows any emotion. And that's how it was. So, for example, going back to when Solomon is about to be hung, and he's just on his tippy toes, everyone's just playing in the background because they're used to it. You know?
Yeah. And one slave like sneaks to try to give him some water.
And then runs away.
And then you still see the mistress like on the porch watching him hang there. Because at first I was like, oh, what's taking so long? Like if they know that they have to grab the headmaster, they can just chop him down, right? Like if we know this is bad and they're going to go try to fix it, let's just take him down now. But you just see hours go by and we just have to wait till the man can come bring him down as the mistress watches from the porch. All the slaves
know
just
they ignore him.
They don't have him. They can't be a part of this.
Right, and I think they also have a glimpse of it too. Like, I'm just going off of a whim here, but in the beginning where he's being sold off on the boat, where one of like the shipmates that are transporting the slaves grabs a girl, and one of a male slave tries to stop it, he's instantly killed.
Oh yeah.
So it sets a tone for everyone else to see. Like, okay, maybe I don't want to.
Right.
Get interfered.
Especially since the guy on the boat, he didn't even do anything. He stands up and he like puts his hand on the shoulder of the guy taking the woman, and already he has a knife in him.
Yeah, he's stabbed.
He didn't he didn't have a chance to do anything.
And it was that guy who said, I think we should stand up and fight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that seems to be what kind of stamps out that rebellious feeling that Solomon has at first, like we need to escape. And then once that guy dies, it's like, no, obviously that I can't do that, so I'm just going to try to survive.
That's probably one of my favorite things about this movie is how it gives you glimpses of hope and just snuffs it out.
Yeah.
And for me, I think my favorite scene in this movie is one of those moments where Solomon is given hope in a new white worker on Michael Fassbender's plantation, where you see that this man is, which is also an interesting concept because I didn't know that, maybe sometimes there will be workers that aren't black slaves, but, someone in debt that has to do the same thing, but is treated differently than the slaves. As we see, he doesn't get whipped for doing the worst, And so we're given a chance to see Solomon find some hope in this man that tells him, oh, I'm in debt. I'm this alcoholic that no one really cares about. And so Solomon feels like he has a chance to confide in this man to say, I'm putting my life on the line. Would you be willing to help me in this moment to send a letter to the north and free me? Obviously, that doesn't work out. But the scene, I wasn't expecting that to get betrayed, but the way they play it out with Michael Fassbender's character coming in the night to bring Solomon on a walk by lantern and just having this very intimate, like 5 inches away conversation in the dark about, so I heard this white character's name is Armsby. I heard Armsby trying to help someone here get out, or someone trying to get out by talking to him. That moment, that whole scene where we see Solomon have to figure out how to get out of the situation, like I was holding my breath the whole time. And to see the moment where Solomon is able to think quick on his feet and be like, oh, this is all a ruse to get Armsby just wants to become your headmaster and overseer.
Yeah, your overseer.
And can't you see the grand scheme of this? Like, believe me. And it's believable and smart. And you see that, like, if he wouldn't have done that, you just see Michael Fassbender kind of lighten up and show that he had a gun in his hand. And so to get this moment of hope that was just snuffed, like, I was holding my breath and then, like, I felt like I wanted to cry in that moment of, like, oh my gosh, like, that was almost it right there.
Yeah.
And then it contrasts with Solomon taking that letter right then in the dark and lighting on fire, and you just see it become this ember into nothing until everything fades to black. I felt like that was such a beautiful, an awful moment, but a beautiful interpretation and style to go about showing how hope is gone.
Yeah.
I love that moment.
I guess TK was mentioning the music, and one last thing that I wrote down when I was watching. There are parts towards the beginning of the film where Hans Zimmer's score feels a little bit too like bombastic and like really clangy. Like when they're on the boat and stuff, the music's like really loud and it's kind of distracting. And it's weird because the instrumentation that Zimmer uses during that part doesn't come back later, so it just kind of sticks out weirdly. I thought that the main theme worked really well for like most of the film. One of the things that I noticed though is that it sounds nearly identical to Zimmer's song Time from Inception. It has like the same chord progression. And so like every time I heard it and it was like prominent, I just felt like I was watching like the end of Inception. So it was a little distracting at times. Zimmer's obviously a legendary composer, but there were just a few times where his score distracted me a little bit from the film.
I'm glad I didn't put two and two together, because in my head while watching, every time the theme came on at first, I was like, oh, so this is where it's from? Because it felt so familiar that I thought that maybe it was like a TikTok sound or something.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, oh, it's from this movie. So every time it came on, I just associated it as, oh, I guess I've heard this before. If I had known that was the Inception song Time, that would have kind of taken me out.
Yeah, I'll have to show you later a side-by-side comparison. But it's really close to the same chord progression and instrumentation.
The moment that got me, like, I felt like I was following along with the movie with his character. Of course, it's what it's doing for you, but one moment I thought that was really cool. I don't know when this is, so maybe one of you guys can remember, but we get the shot of the main character where he is kind of to the left of the screen, staring out, and then he like starts looking, and then he kind of makes eye contact with you as a viewer, and then he keeps looking at it. That was really hard because he doesn't say anything in that. Maybe that was during the funeral scene after they sing.
So when that happens, it's right after he tells Brad Pitt that he's to send off a letter.
That's right.
Okay.
And it's like shown that like some time has passed, and like I feel like the meaning of like that particular scene, that shot, was also to like kind of show us that like he's basically given up hope and he doesn't think he's going to be saved, and he thought, probably Brad Pitt just ran off and is never going to see him again.
Or at least, I guess I didn't see it quite like that, but I saw it more as he's realized that he's put everything out there and now it's up to someone else.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He told someone and he knows that could get him killed, and there's nothing else for him to do. And so it kind of looks like he's trying to just find peace in his decision and just decide, okay, whatever happens is going to happen, and I've done everything I can. My life is in danger, but we'll see.
It's vulnerable and heartbreaking, and not a single word is spoken.
Well, I would say it's like he's shown his cards, and he's just waiting for like the last card to be dealt and see if he's got a good hand.
Yeah,
that's literally the best way I could put it.
Chiwetel Ejiofor, I just applaud his acting this whole movie. In that moment, kind of just really sealed the deal for me as at his performance of just his look that he has of just sheer vulnerability and it's just heartbreaking. And then when you get that split second where you kind of make eye contact with him, it's like it felt like I was seeing his soul, and that was very, very powerful. And I just really applaud him as an actor in this movie.
I feel like all of the actors like brought their A game. Benedict Cumberbatch is always great. Michael Fassbender is one of my favorite actors, and all of the supporting cast. Paul Giamatti, he's pretty good.
Nyong'o is really good.
Yeah. And they were so this movie was filmed in Louisiana, where a lot of the actual events took place, and they were in Red River County, where this is where everything happened. And I think at one point, one of the locations they shot on was 10 miles away from one of the locations where where Solomon was held. And they said that was really powerful for them as they were filming this movie, to be right where everything happened, which I think was cool. They filmed this movie really fast. They started in June, the middle of June, and they finished in August. Like right at the beginning of August. So they tried to keep their budget down, just staying in Louisiana, I think. Oh, I think the moment that got me... Oh, what I was trying to say earlier. I felt like I was getting very emotional throughout this film, especially seeing like that last glimmer of hope gone with the Armsby situation and the impact that left on me. But what really got me were my emotions just... I could kind of feel what he felt was when he got back to his family, and that was very hard. But the moment he sees his daughter with a baby and a husband, and they walk up to him and they're like, "Oh, this is was it granddaughter or grandson?
Grandson.
This is your grandson, Solomon." That I just started bawling my eyes out because it's such a hard thing for him to hear and for us to hear of, like, he's been gone 12 years. And you feel that it's been a long time throughout the movie, but one thing they do a good job of that I read in a review is that I think intentionally Solomon doesn't look any different in age throughout the movie until he's back with his family. Mm-hmm. And you see him with a lot more gray hair, and it just made it even more impactful of, like, oh wow, this has been 12 years and his family looks completely different. And it's not necessarily a moment of, like, beautiful reunion for Solomon. He feels awful and heartbroken that he couldn't be there for his family for so long, and embarrassed and sorry that he's even in front of them right now. But to have his grandson in front of him that gets a hold and that they remembered him and named, oh gosh.
Yeah, well, and for me, like, the significance that they named the kid after him is that Solomon has not been able to use his real name for 12 years. He was renamed Platt, and he was never able to acknowledge that he ever had another name. Mm-hmm. And so the fact that, like, this child that represents, like, hope, birth, newness of life, like, this baby has the name that Solomon has been forbidden to use for over a decade.
Wow, I didn't think of it that way. That's wow.
Yeah,
that's powerful.
Yeah,
and that was just a really, really nice way to end the movie.
Yeah,
because you're given every emotion. Again, it's not romanticized. You get to see the problem with having to come back to your family for so long and them having no explanation for it. You don't necessarily see a reunion with him and his wife. It looks like she's still just standing there, but then get a moment where everyone embraces with him, and it just felt very I could take a breath for our character. He's finally back. I felt it was really powerful.
Yeah,
for sure.
Really good stuff.
Yeah. Does anyone else have any other final closing thoughts?
Just in general, I really applaud Steve McQueen's approach to such a difficult topic, but in a new way that, this is something that's can continue to be shown through an art form like this, but I feel like he really brought something new and thought-provoking to the table that had helped me connect with this situation or history in a different way that I have not seen in a movie or gotten from a history book.
Yeah. Definitely makes sense why it won Best Picture of the year it came out.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I think we should just go around and give, like, our ratings for it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I would give it 9. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, this is like a really solid 8 out of 10. I could see it going up on rewatch, but for now, like, it's just really good, really solid. I loved everything about it. I loved the approach. Acting was phenomenal. Everything was wrapped up very well. The use of the recurring themes and foreshadowing was done really well. So, yeah, really solid 8 out of 10.
Yeah, I want to give it I also wanted to think about giving it like an 8 out of 10. And the only reason why I wasn't thinking about giving it a 9 was because it was just such a difficult topic. But I think it does deserve a 9 because of how it handles it. And it's supposed to be difficult. And so I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10.
I too as well give it a 9 out of 10. I think you're just thrown into the situation. It's not like you hit the ground running per se, but you're like walking alongside with it,
Yeah.
It wraps everything so good.
Yeah. I'm excited to watch this other stuff.
Yeah, me too.
Mm-hmm. Sure. And it's definitely a very mature film as we've described it.
Yeah.
So if you're thinking about watching it, just be prepared. Like, the first 20 minutes of the film gives you a good idea. Actually, even like the first 3 minutes.
Yeah, the flash forward helps.
Yeah.
Set your expectations.
Exactly. But it's a great film. We all thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yes.
Wonderful. Cool.
All right. Well, if that's all our thoughts, thank you for listening to the Film Audit.
Mm-hmm.
And before we end this podcast, we have David picking our next film.
Yeah. So I've had a few weeks to think about it. Doesn't mean I started thinking about it before last week, but I was looking through like my watch list and things that I've been wanting to see recently, and I decided on something that I've actually already seen before, but I haven't watched in over a year. Might be 2 years now. But it was a movie that when I first watched, I really enjoyed it. I loved it. And it's just something that I've never gotten around to revisiting. So I kind of want to use this as an excuse to watch it again and share it with you guys, because I think most of you haven't seen it. And so my recommendation for this next episode is Alejandro González Iñárritu's Birdman, or The Unexpected Virtue of Ignorance, from 2014.
Ooh.
Is Birdman the one with Michael Keaton?
Yes.
That's what I thought.
We're going up year by year.
You're
This
right.
is 13. Now this is 14.
Yeah. So if you don't want to be spoiled for Birdman or The Unexpected Virtue of Ignorance, check it out before our next episode drops. These episodes are released every other week on Monday.
All right. Well, with that, I think we're going to wrap things up. Thank you guys so much for listening.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
Yep.
See you next time.
See ya.